Section 1. Introduction. Unlikely allies. The world of political funding is often opaque, a realm where money flows through intricate networks, shaping agendas and influencing outcomes. While we tend to think of political giving as aligning neatly with ideological divides, liberals supporting liberal causes, conservatives backing conservative ones, the reality is far more complex. Sometimes the most surprising alliances emerge, blurring the lines between left and right, and raising questions about the true motives behind the funding. One such unexpected partnership has recently come under scrutiny, sparking debate and raising eyebrows: the funding of ostensibly left-leaning causes by prominent right-wing donors. This phenomenon, where conservative financiers back organizations or movements often associated with liberal ideologies, presents a perplexing paradox. Is it a calculated strategy to undermine and discredit these causes from within? Or is it a more nuanced attempt to exert influence over complex policy discussions and steer them in a desired direction? To unravel this intricate web of funding and influence, we turn our attention to a specific case study: the Brookings Institution, a renowned think tank known for its centrist to center-left perspective on policy issues. Brookings has found itself at the heart of a controversy surrounding its stance on defunding the police, a movement that has gained significant traction in recent years, particularly following the murder of George Floyd. The debate over defunding the police is inherently divisive, eliciting strong reactions from both sides of the political spectrum. Yet, the involvement of conservative funders in supporting organizations like Brookings, which has engaged in nuanced discussions on police reform and community safety, adds another layer of complexity to an already contentious issue. This unexpected nexus of funding and ideology demands closer examination, prompting us to explore the motivations behind such unconventional alliances and their potential implications for political discourse and policy outcomes. Section 2. Defunding the police, a divisive demand. The term defunding the police has become a lightning rod in American political discourse, evoking strong emotions and polarizing opinions. For some, it represents a radical call to dismantle law enforcement agencies entirely, replacing them with alternative models of community safety. Others interpret it as a more nuanced approach to reimagining public safety, reallocating resources away from traditional policing and towards social services, mental health support, and community-based initiatives. The movement to defund the police gained significant momentum in the wake of George Floyd's murder, as protests erupted across the country demanding an end to police brutality and systemic racism. The call to defund the police emerged from a deep-seated frustration with the perceived failures of traditional law enforcement to protect communities of color and address issues of racial injustice. However, the ambiguity surrounding the term itself has led to widespread misunderstanding and mischaracterization. Critics of the movement often seize upon the most extreme interpretations, portraying it as an attack on law and order and a recipe for chaos. This framing has been particularly effective in mobilizing conservative opposition, painting the defund the police movement as a dangerous and radical ideology. The reality, however, is far more nuanced. Many proponents of police reform advocate for a more strategic reallocation of resources, arguing that investing in social services, mental health support, and community-based initiatives can address the root causes of crime and create a more equitable and just society. They contend that traditional policing methods have often proven ineffective in addressing issues like homelessness, addiction, and mental illness, and that diverting some funding towards alternative approaches could lead to more effective and humane outcomes. Section 3. The Brookings Institution, a think tank in the crosshairs. The Brookings Institution, founded in 1916, has long been regarded as one of the most influential think tanks in Washington, D.C., with a reputation for rigorous research, data-driven analysis, and a commitment to finding pragmatic solutions to complex policy challenges. Brookings has earned the respect of policymakers across the political spectrum. However, in recent years, the institution has found itself at the center of a controversy surrounding its stance on defunding the police and its acceptance of funding from conservative donors. Brookings has taken a nuanced approach to the debate over police reform, acknowledging the systemic problems within law enforcement while also emphasizing the need for effective public safety measures. The institution has published research papers and hosted events exploring various aspects of police reform, including alternative models of community safety, the role of race and implicit bias in policing, and the potential benefits of reallocating resources towards social services and community-based initiatives. This balanced approach, however, has drawn criticism from both sides of the political spectrum. Some on the left have accused Brookings of being too cautious and accommodating to law enforcement interests, while some on the right have criticized the institution for engaging with the defund the police movement at all. The revelation that Brookings has received funding from conservative donors, including those associated with the Koch network, has further fueled the controversy. The involvement of conservative funders in supporting an institution like Brookings, known for its centrist to center-left leanings, has raised questions about the motives behind such unconventional alliances. Is it a deliberate attempt to influence Brookings' research and policy recommendations, steering them in a more conservative direction? Or is it a more strategic maneuver to discredit the institution and undermine its credibility, particularly on issues like police reform? Section 4. The paradox of conservative funding. The presence of conservative funding behind organizations or movements typically associated with liberal ideologies presents a perplexing paradox. On the surface, it seems counterintuitive that those who espouse conservative values would financially support causes that seemingly run contrary to their own beliefs. This unexpected convergence of funding and ideology has sparked debate and speculation, leading to various interpretations of the motivations behind such unconventional alliances. One perspective views this phenomenon as a calculated strategy to undermine and discredit left-leaning causes from within. By providing financial support to organizations or movements they ultimately oppose, conservative funders may seek to exert influence over their direction, subtly shifting their focus or introducing alternative perspectives that align with their own agenda. This tactic could be seen as a form of strategic philanthropy, where funding is used not simply to support a cause, but to manipulate it for political gain. Another interpretation posits that conservative funders may be motivated by a desire to shape policy discussions and influence outcomes in a way that aligns with their broader ideological goals. Rather than seeking to undermine left-leaning causes outright, they may aim to engage with them in a more nuanced way, injecting their own perspectives and priorities into the conversation. This approach could be seen as a form of engagement philanthropy, where funding is used to participate in policy debates and advocate for specific solutions that align with their own values. Distinguishing between these two interpretations, strategic discreditation versus policy influence, is crucial for understanding the implications of conservative funding for left-leaning causes. While both approaches share the goal of advancing a particular agenda, their methods and ultimate objectives differ significantly. Strategic discreditation seeks to undermine and weaken opposing viewpoints, while policy influence aims to shape and mold them in a desired direction. Section 5. Strategic discreditation or policy influence. The case of the Brookings Institution provides a compelling example for examining the motivations behind conservative funding of organizations often associated with liberal ideologies. The institution's nuanced approach to police reform, acknowledging the need for change while also emphasizing the importance of effective public safety measures, has made it a target of criticism from both sides of the political spectrum. This vulnerability makes Brookings a prime candidate for both strategic discreditation and policy influence. From a strategic discreditation perspective, conservative funders may see Brookings' engagement with the defunding the police movement as an opportunity to undermine its credibility and paint it as beholden to radical ideologies. By highlighting the institution's acceptance of funding from conservative sources, they can create a narrative that casts doubt on its objectivity and independence. This tactic could be particularly effective in a highly polarized political environment, where even the perception of bias can be enough to discredit an organization or its research. On the other hand, conservative funders may view Brookings as a valuable platform for influencing policy discussions and advocating for solutions that align with their own priorities. By supporting Brookings' research and events on police reform, they can ensure that their perspectives are represented in these conversations. This approach could be particularly effective given Brookings' reputation for rigorous research and its influence among policymakers. Ultimately, discerning the true motivations behind conservative funding of organizations like Brookings requires careful analysis and consideration of the broader context. The specific goals of the funders, the nature of their engagement with the recipient organization, and the potential impact on policy outcomes all play a role in determining whether the funding represents a strategy of discreditation or an attempt to influence policy discussions. Section 6. A broader pattern of unconventional funding. The case of the Brookings Institution highlights a broader pattern of unconventional funding arrangements, where organizations or movements often associated with one side of the political spectrum receive financial support from donors with seemingly opposing ideologies. This phenomenon extends beyond the realm of think tanks and encompasses a wide range of causes, from environmental protection to social justice advocacy. For example, some environmental organizations have received funding from corporations with a history of environmental violations. While these corporations may face public pressure to demonstrate their commitment to sustainability, their funding of environmental groups could also be seen as a way to influence their agenda and ensure that their interests are represented. This dynamic raises questions about the potential for conflicts of interest and the extent to which corporate funding can shape the priorities of environmental organizations. Similarly, some social justice organizations have received funding from foundations or individuals associated with conservative ideologies. While these funders may express support for certain aspects of social justice, their involvement could also be motivated by a desire to steer these movements in a direction that aligns with their own values. This raises concerns about the potential for co-optation and the extent to which external funding can influence the direction and goals of social justice movements. The prevalence of unconventional funding arrangements across various sectors suggests that the motivations behind such alliances are complex and multifaceted. While some instances may represent genuine attempts to find common ground and support shared goals, others may reflect more strategic calculations aimed at influencing, shaping, or discrediting the recipient organizations or movements. Understanding the nuances of these funding dynamics is crucial for navigating the intricate world of political influence and assessing the potential impact on policy outcomes. Section 7. The Koch Network, a case study in right-wing philanthropy. To further explore the dynamics of unconventional funding, it's crucial to examine the role of influential donor networks, particularly those associated with conservative ideologies. One such network that has garnered significant attention for its extensive reach and impact is the Koch Network, a constellation of wealthy donors and foundations spearheaded by the billionaire industrialists Charles and David Koch. The Koch Network has been a major force in American politics for decades, pouring vast sums of money into various conservative causes, think tanks, and advocacy groups. Their funding has played a pivotal role in shaping the Republican Party's agenda, promoting free market principles, deregulation, and limited government intervention. However, the network's reach extends beyond traditional conservative causes, as they have also invested in organizations and initiatives that may seem at odds with their overarching ideology. For instance, the Koch Network has funded research on criminal justice reform, advocating for policies that reduce incarceration rates and promote alternatives to imprisonment. While these efforts may align with a libertarian perspective on individual liberty and limited government, they also intersect with progressive calls for criminal justice reform, creating an unexpected convergence of interests. Similarly, the Koch Network has supported research on climate change, albeit with a focus on market-based solutions rather than government regulation. This nuanced approach to climate change, while distinct from the regulatory approach favored by many environmental groups, demonstrates the network's willingness to engage with issues that may not align perfectly with their traditional conservative agenda. These examples highlight the complexities of donor motivations and the potential for unconventional funding alliances to emerge even within networks known for their ideological consistency. Section 8. Implications for political discourse. The prevalence of unconventional funding arrangements, where organizations or movements receive support from donors with seemingly opposing ideologies, has significant implications for political discourse and the functioning of democratic societies. The blurring of lines between left and right, coupled with the opacity of funding networks, can create confusion and distrust among the public, making it difficult to discern the true motivations behind political giving and its potential impact on policy outcomes. The presence of conservative funding behind organizations or movements often associated with liberal ideologies can fuel accusations of co-optation, and undermine public trust in these causes. Critics may question the independence and authenticity of such movements, suggesting that they are being manipulated by external forces to serve an agenda that runs counter to their stated goals. This skepticism can erode public support and hinder the effectiveness of these movements in advocating for change. Moreover, the influence of unconventional funding can distort public perception of the political landscape, creating an illusion of consensus where none exists. When organizations or movements from seemingly opposing sides of the political spectrum receive funding from the same sources, it can give the impression that there is more agreement on certain issues than there actually is. This can obscure the true nature of political debates and hinder the ability of citizens to make informed decisions about the issues that affect their lives. To mitigate the negative consequences of unconventional funding on political discourse, greater transparency and accountability are essential. Organizations and movements should be transparent about their funding sources, disclosing any potential conflicts of interest and ensuring that their donors' values align with their own mission and goals. Policymakers should implement regulations that promote transparency in political giving, making it easier for the public to track the flow of money and understand its potential influence on policy decisions. Section 9. Conclusion: Navigating the complexities. The world of political funding is a labyrinth of intricate networks, hidden agendas, and unexpected alliances. The emergence of unconventional funding arrangements, where organizations or movements receive support from donors with seemingly opposing ideologies, adds another layer of complexity to an already opaque system. Unraveling the motivations behind such alliances requires careful analysis, considering the specific context, the goals of the funders, and the potential impact on the recipient organizations or movements. While some instances of unconventional funding may represent genuine attempts to find common ground and support shared goals, others may reflect more strategic calculations aimed at influencing, shaping, or discrediting the recipient organizations or movements. Distinguishing between these motivations is crucial for understanding the implications of such funding arrangements and their potential impact on policy outcomes. The case of the Brookings Institution, a renowned think tank that has found itself at the center of a controversy surrounding its stance on defunding the police and its acceptance of funding from conservative donors, exemplifies the complexities of this issue. Whether this funding represents an attempt to strategically discredit the institution or to influence its research and policy recommendations remains a subject of debate. Ultimately, navigating the complexities of unconventional funding requires greater transparency, accountability, and a critical eye towards the motivations behind political giving. By shedding light on the intricate networks of funding and influence, we can foster a more informed and engaged citizenry, better equipped to assess the credibility of organizations and movements, and make informed decisions about the issues that shape our society.